and I want you to pull it out. And I said, oh, okay. And I went under the bed. Of course, cobwebs, a lot of dust. Bring it out, and it was tied up with this old twine, and I opened it, and it disintegrated in the air. Hadn't probably been touched in 60, 70 years. Mind you, Osher's like 88, he's like maybe close to 90 at this time. This is like 84, 85. And I look and I see music. I see sheet music, and I said, holy shit, Osher. And he said to me, ja, Yitzchak, and he said, das ist gewesen mein Gigbuch. This was my gig book. He used the word gig.
Hi, you're listening to Conversations with Musicians with Leah Roseman. This podcast strives to inspire you through the personal stories of a diversity of musicians with in-depth conversations and great music that reveal the depth and breadth to a life in music. I was honored to be able to record this wide-ranging interview with violinist Yale Strom, who is the leading ethnographer-artist of klezmer music and history, and also has done many years of research among the Roma communities. He speaks to us about some of his many inspiring experiences during over 75 research expeditions to Central and Eastern Europe and the Balkans. To prepare for this episode, I read several of his books, including his 400-page The Book of Klezmer, The History, the Music, the Folklore, some of which we touched on during this conversation, and he also spoke about two of his upcoming books and other projects. Yale is an energetic and prolific creator. He's also a filmmaker, photographer, educator, playwright, and composer. Like all my episodes, you can watch this on my YouTube channel or listen to the podcast on all the podcast platforms, and I've also linked the transcript to my website, leahroseman.com. The podcast theme music was commissioned from composer Nick Cold, and you can use the timestamps to navigate the episode. It's a joy to bring these inspiring episodes to you every week, and I do all the many jobs of research, production, and publicity. You can support this independent podcast through both the unique collection of merchandise with an expressive design from artist Steffi Kelly, as well as through my Ko-fi page. This weekly podcast is in season 4, and I send out an email newsletter where you can get access to exclusive information about upcoming guests. Have a look at the description of this episode, where you'll find all the links. Now to Yale Strom. Hi, Yale. Thanks so much for joining me here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You're the second ethnomusicologist I've had on this series. The first was Verna Gillis, but you're very much a performer, and that's kind of what gave you the impetus to do this research.
Yes, performer-artist. When you do ethnomusicology, ethnographic research, so you do it, and then you've compiled something. You can hold it in your hand, you can look at it, and you can keep it for yourself, but what's the point? You want to share it with others because you're proud of it and you think it will enlighten people. I could have gone the way where I did things more focused only for papers, for universities, higher academic institutions, which is fine, but that may then my findings may be read by 500 people, maybe 1,000 academics. But I wanted to reach literally millions of people, so I took the findings and I used it in documentary filmmaking, books that I've written, plays that I've written, songs that I've written, and even in my photography exhibitions. So I work in all those forms of all those mediums, but it all stems, as you said, from the initial impetus to do the research. Well, I did read. Here's a pile of your books. Oh, wow! I appreciate that.
So we'll be talking about some of that, but maybe it would be very interesting to start with, as we record this, a recent concert you did at a historic shul in Detroit. Do you want to speak to that project?
I'd love to. The shul, the original name of the shul was like a congregation base, Aaron Israel. Built approximately in 1931-32 in Detroit, in the city of Detroit, And what it was is, this was a very Jewish neighborhood, very East European Jewish neighborhood, and there was a group of Jews, many that had come from, it was Poland at the time. Today it's Belarus. Southern Belarus, the town of Stolin, Dovid-Horodok, even Pinsk, Rubel, etc. And a number of those people were my relatives who came from Stolin, my Boba, my Alta Boba, my great-grandmother, several of my great-aunts and uncles. Anyhow, so they were davening in different little shtiblach, little shuls here and there. And finally he said, you know what? We have something in common. We come from the same region. We're speaking Yiddish, and we daven the same way. Which, we were followers of the Stolin Karlin Hasidim. So let's build a shul, and they did. And so the shul was there from 32 to about 1960. After the shul opened, between 32 and 46, there were 2 Stoliner Rebbes alive in the world. The rest, sadly, had perished in the Holocaust in Eastern Europe, particularly in around Stolin, which today is Belarus. Anyhow, there were 2 brothers, Yankov, and Israel. That's right, I'm just thinking now. Israel, I believe, yes. Anyhow, Yankov was a little older one. But anyways, they sort of shared duties. They lived in Williamsburg. Long story short, Yankov says, wow, we have all these followers in Detroit, which attracted the East European Jewish immigrant. We know for sure what? The automobile industry, and making $5 a day in 1915 was a lot of money, and it was a steady job. So my Zeta did that, my grandfather, and other relatives. Anyhow, so he said, oh, I'm going to visit them. I have to pay my respects, maybe get some tzedakah, some charity, also do some, maybe I need to rule on any kind of problems that might be financial or religious. So he would come once a year for 1 week after Pesach, and he would stay in my great-grandmother's home. My Baba lived downstairs, this duplex, which was a great honor, because he's a Rebbe, keeps kosher, Shomer Shabbos, but it's also he has to feel comfortable in the home. And he did feel comfortable because he knew her from the old country, and they spoke Yiddish, they were like friends. So anyhow, that gave a lot of merit to my family. He passes away in the home, 1946. They go quickly, they open his suitcase, they say, whoa, there's a shroud here. And the brother says, yes, the shroud's there? Okay, guess what? Bury him where he passed away. So anyways, they do that, and he's buried there. Long story short, I decided to do this concert to celebrate the East European Jewish community, particularly the Hasidic side, and the African-American community that bought the church in 1972 and gospel music. And so we had hallelujahs in the house, celebrating both cultures through gospel and Hasidic music.
Beautiful. And so you did perform together some of them.
Yes, well, they performed, we performed, and at the end I brought us all together for a song that I wrote called Never Doubt, sort of my try at writing a gospel. What I was quite proud of is that I'm going to write a gospel tune, but being Jewish, I'm not going to write about Mother Mary or even Jesus, or Peter and Paul, whatever. I mean, I could, but it didn't seem appropriate, and it just didn't move me. So I said, well, let me find some text. So I did a little research, and I found this text written by Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He lived like the 2nd century, about the 200s, 3rd century, I guess. And he was one of the writers of the Ethics of Our Father, Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Father. So I was reading and I saw something he wrote, and it really moved me. So not taking his text, but the ideas and thoughts that it conjured, I wrote my own text, and people were really quite, wow, this is really kind of cool. And the chorus, which everybody's saying, people in the audience, blacks, Jews, everybody was, never doubt, I will shout, the words of the Lord give me strength. And so I used the word Lord, and everyone got into it. So it was a lot of fun. It was very successful. I mean, I could have been 10 people, but it was sold out. People were turned away, and I was also raising money for the church. They need it. It's a poor church. It's and there are many things that need fixing, and so I was glad to be able to do that. And they were. They didn't take me serious for the first 10 months as I was, I was working on this for several years. But as we got into 2024, whatever. And finally, one of the elders, he said, no, I know what you're doing, Yale. And at the end, like the last 3 weeks, he said, oh, it's really happening. We're getting all these calls, or, the press, whatever. And I said, you should take it serious, because I'm also giving you money. I'm not taking a penny from it. And I didn't ask you to pay for anything. You just take care of the gospel side of things. But all in all, I was really pleased. And then we did a family photo on the steps with all my relatives. I said, raise your hand if you're a first or 31st cousin, because I have a lot of cousins. And, I would say 1/5 of the audience was my mishpacha.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This is Oberek Palota, klezmer music from Slovakia, from the album Borsht with Bread Brothers, with Yale Strom and Hot Pstromi. So you use the Yiddish term Bal Kulturnik. Mm-hmm. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. A master of culture. And, I think I am. It sounds, I'm sort of bragging, but I'll let others decide for themselves. But I have certainly worked in a lot of genres, different mediums, and I think successfully too. I've been reviewed. and I can take bad reviews with good reviews. Obviously, I like the when they're more positive, but I'm not thin-skinned. I've been doing this for several decades, but people have come to me and say, wow, we look forward to your next book or your next recording or your next documentary film. I learned a lot from you. I've moved you. I've been moved by you. Or I went to search for my roots because of you. Or I became a Klezmer because of you. And I'm talking about Jews and non-Jews. So that feels good that I have swayed people to not only enjoy it passively, but maybe become active in that particular art form that moves them. And so yeah, I am a leader, like a teacher. So, but I thought it's kind of cool to kind of create that term because a ballet kulturnik and one who is a master, one who leads people, whether it's singing in the synagogue or one who's just good at giving advice on various issues. So I think where I can speak with some authority is the areas that I have researched extensively, still do. I don't rest on any laurels if I say I have any, and still reading, and I learn from others. And so yeah, that's why I created that term in my book about ballet kulturnik, right?
I think a great place for people to start is A Wandering Feast, because it's full of inspiring and interesting stories, and each little Misa has a food, like a vegetarian recipe, and also music. I'm vegetarian too, and I really appreciated that, and lovely photos.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a really wonderful book, and it documents your very first ethnographic trip. And you've been back to Eastern Europe, more than 60 times or something?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's closing into like probably 70 or 80, but yes, right.
Okay.
I'm actually going there in like 10 days.
Yeah. Like many people, my grandparents had immigrated from Eastern Europe. They were Yiddish speakers. My parents were Yiddish speakers. I didn't learn it as a kid, but I heard it. And as an adult, I've gone back and tried to learn some. But you're kind of unusual for this generation that you actually had good Yiddish and you were able to go to Europe and find people to speak it with across all these different countries.
Well, my Yiddish got better.
Yeah.
I did hear a lot of Yiddish from my father, some from my mother. She had kind of a wide vocabulary. It was more from my dad and from my uncles, my uncles, aunts, great uncles and aunts, and my baba, who I remember fondly until she passed away when I was at my age of 16. But we would talk and a lot when she would visit us, and so that helped. And then after the first trip, I said I want to learn even more. I want to be able to read and write it, even if it's slow going when I write, or read it. And so then I did seek out a course, and then I went to Columbia University to learn Yiddish more formally. But it did help, yeah, and that helped open a door, many memories. But I will tell you this, Leah, correct, Leah? Mm-hmm. I will tell you, Leah, that the tool that really helped me the most as an ethnographer, as an ethnomusicologist, more than Yiddish, was the violin. I know that for a fact because I have been and with other colleagues, PhDs, and brilliant, wonderful people who did not get the same results as me because they did not play an instrument. And not just any instrument, but I played the Jewish instrument. And yes, we're proud to say it. The violin was known as a Jewish instrument up until the eve of World War II for a reason. Well, because you can name, it wasn't like one or two yet. It was like, oh my God, I don't have enough fingers and toes to name all the virtuoso, not just Jews that play the violin, but who were known as the best in the world. And so the violin was an instrument in klezmer music. I mean, yes, the clarinet we know, and the flutes and bass and hammer, dulcimer, cymbal, but the violin. I mean, there's a reason of the Fiddler on the Roof. There's a reason that Marc Chagall, made a character of the violinist. So that really was my tool. And luckily, when I began at 8 years of age in the beautiful city of Detroit, little did I realize how it was going to be such a useful tool many years later.
Mm-hmm. You must have had such a sense of urgency going there and meeting these Holocaust survivors.
Yes. The sense of urgency though came once I got there. Here I'm in my early mid-20s. So, I'm a bright person. I have a couple BAs under my belt. I read. I think I'm fairly intelligent. I'm politically aware. I kind of know what's going around the world outside of. Then from Detroit we moved to San Diego, outside of my neighborhood of San Diego. But when I got there, and I had studied, I had taken several Jewish studies. I had a minor in Jewish studies actually at San Diego State, so I studied and read a lot of biographies from Holocaust survivors. So when I got there, that's when it really hits you. First, you're seeing the life that they're living. Some was quite well, some not because of poverty, some not because of the restrictions. This was the East Bloc. Every country, from Hungary to Bulgaria to Poland to Ukraine to former Yugoslavia, there were different levels of restrictions and freedoms for every human. But for Jews, now we're this minority, and they know it. And so there were some other restrictions or other, they had to be more careful in certain ways, particularly at certain professions they had. They were still working and they weren't retired. But then I realized it. And you know what really made me really realize it? I don't know if I read it in The Wandering Feast, but he's in The Wandering Feast. When I met Eli, the shamus, in Košice, Kassel was known as Hungarians, and that was something too I'm learning from these Jews. I'm hearing him speak Hungarian, I'm hearing him speak Yiddish, so I'm thinking, well, the guy's not speaking any Slovak, no Czech-Slovak, or very little. And then I started talking. He says, and for all the Holocaust survivors, for sure, even for the Jews who weren't. Yale, they never call me Yale. Rarely. Yale? They didn't, it's not like, we never heard of it. What's that mean? I said, no, you call me Yitzchak or Itzik. They said, that we'll call you, that we know. So I was Itzik or Yitzchak. He said, Yitzchak, my mother tongue's Yiddish, but our second mother tongue is Magyar, Hungarian. And then I start learning Austro-Hungarian, the strong culture of Hungarian, and they were very proud of it, still maintaining a Hungarian aspect of their culture in Slovakia, eastern Slovakia, on the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains. But I remember what he said to me. He said, Yitzhak, what you're doing is so important. I said, well, I appreciate it. Why do you think it's so important? He says, because you will live a lot longer than me. I am in my golden years. My friends, my family, we have a couple more decades. When we're gone, who is going to record these stories of us survivors? Whether it's about how we survived, how we made life after World War II in Eastern Europe, because I didn't go to Israel. I didn't go to England or New York like many people did. I'm still here. And the songs you're recording, you'll play them, other people will learn them. So I know that you'll pass this history on, and it's important. And then I realized, I said, wow, that was kind of, I'm younger than I am now, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a heavy responsibility. But I realized the importance of what I was doing, and you said the word urgency, because no one knows, or how long any of us have on Earth. But I knew once people are hitting 80, 85, 90, maybe another decade, I hope, even bis 120, we say, but we don't know. And their lives weren't easy. Some of Ellie, he was poor. I mean, he was lower middle class. Or actually, I'm going to say he was poor. I went to his house. I gave him some money. He told me he got money from the joint. The shul, people would help him. But he never, you know what? These people never said, oh, play me a sad song on the violin, They were very proud people. And they said, I've made my choices. I decided to stay here. And I've made a life. And maybe I should have done this or should have done that, but this is why I'm here. And you and I are talking today, and we're going to have a good time this week while you're here. And I'm going to show you around, and I'm going to introduce you to people, and I'm going to tell you all the bubble mices about him. This guy, one who does this one who's sleeping with that person, whatever, And that was fun, too. He had a good sense of humor.
And another one of your albums, The Devil's Brides, you talk about the context of each musical selection with Miriam Margolis.
Yes, Miriam, the wonderful actress, right? We know her. She's done many things, but she's kind of well known to people who follow Harry Potter. I forgot she played Mrs. something. She had a reoccurring role. Yes. By the way, so here's another art form. I, along with my wife, Elizabeth Schwartz, and another fellow wonderful writer, Ellen Kushner, we co-wrote, and I did the music for an audio drama. People can download it and go to audible.com or wherever you find your audio. It got many. It won awards. We wrote The Witches of Lublin, starring Tova Feldshuh, in fact, the Broadway star, and many other fine actresses. And that story, real quick, is from a simple little fact. We got together, and he said, we should do something together. And I said, what about this? We said, something Jewish, whatever, but what? And women-oriented. And I said, yeah, women, why not? We should. Women-oriented, Jewish. I said, there's a little-known fact that most people never know about, that in the 17th century, there were these big fairs. One was Leipzig, and I can't remember the other one offhand. It's in my book of Klezmer, where Jews, from the outlying little rural areas, you'd come once a year for like a week long, because then people came from, hundreds of miles. First of all, to see people exchange letters. How are you? How's family? How you been? Good. Also to sell all kinds of stuff. And so, and at these fairs, I found in the archives women klezmer bands, all women playing Jewish music because they felt safe. There was lots of people, and they would make money. So the Witches of Lublin is based upon the little-known fact that there were women klezmers as early as the 17th century playing and doing some traveling. Anyhow, the person who helped produce this, Sue Ziza, says, why don't we do the soundtrack, Yale? And she says, you think we can get Miriam Margolis to give the explanations? So that's why it's The Devil's Dream. So it's the soundtrack from the Witches of Lublin, and we're very fortunate to have Miriam sort of narrating the songs. And there we're just a quartet, right? Accordion, violin, bass, vocals. Yeah, we're just a quartet.
Next, you're going to hear one of my favorite traditional Yiddish songs, Dir Gelt, which means rent money. This is from the album The Devil's Brides with Yale Strom and Hot Pstromi. Vocals with Elizabeth Schwartz.
Dir Gelt, und oi, 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 dir Gelt, und Bosche moi, dir Gelt, und grad davoi, dir Gelt muss man zahlen. Kommt rein der Stroh, net der herab das Hittel, und als man zahlt kein dir Gelt, hängt der Reis a Quittel. Dir Gelt, und oi, 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 dir Gelt, und Bosche moi, dir Gelt, und grad davoi, dir Gelt muss man zahlen. Kommt rein der Ballerboss mit dem groben Stecken, und als mir gibt dem Kind der Geld, stellt der Reus die Betten. Der Geld, und oi, 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 der Geld, und Bosche moi, der Geld, und gerade woi, der Geld muss man zahlen. Oi, 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 oi. wegen Stroh nimmt ab die Schliappe. Und als Mensch hat kein Geld, warf raus die Knabe. Geld und oi, 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 Geld und Bože moi, Geld und gerade woi, Geld muss man zahlen. Aber wo soll ich sollen dir Geld, als die Kirche ist zerbrochen? Aber wo soll ich geben dir Geld, als ich hab nicht auf zu kochen? Geld und oi, 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 Geld und Bože moi, Geld und gerade woi, Geld muss man zahlen. Geld und oi, 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 Geld und Bože moi, Geld und gerade woi, Geld muss man zahlen.
Now, I have not had a chance to see any of your documentaries. I've seen a few clips from the last Klezmer about Leopold Kozlowski. Is there a place, I couldn't find a place to stream any of these?
Actually, I believe the last Klezmer might be, I think someone put it up there without my permission. It might be on YouTube. Karpati is on YouTube, Carpati. And my other short film, I did a film called A Great Day in Eldridge Street, which I'm very proud of. That's because this momentous photo that a gathering of some of the great Yiddish singers and klezmer musicians. Like there was the Great Day in Harlem photo, and that's where I got the idea. It's not an original idea, but it was original in the sense of for doing it for klezmer. Mm-hmm. And what perfect place, the Lower East Side. When we think of Hollywood certainly uses the Lower East Side. Even Canada will often use the Lower East Side. It's the birthplace of East European Jewish culture, Yiddish theater, and so I put it on the steps of the Eldridge Street Synagogue, which at one time they were going to close, and then they had just refurbished and rebuilt it. They said, no, this is too important. This is important for all cultures, that we can't just let this building go by the wayside and put up some condos. And so that film, if you do Great Day, the other ones, yes, I'll let you know. Here's the thing, because I do have distributors for my newer films, which is not Jewish, but I'm very proud of it. American Socialist, The Life and Times of Eugene, Victor Debs, first run features. People can get you can go to not Pandora, Amazon, Apple TV.
Okay. And
but my Jewish ones, The Man from Munkasc, that was made by Hungarian and British TV, so they had it. But I can send Vimeos to you. But you're right, they're not
for my listeners too, if people are interested.
Yeah, have them come to me. But if they're interested, if they're interested in the Debs film, first run features, go to them, or you'll just put it in and you'll say, oh yeah, for $10 I can watch the film and sit back, and it's won awards, and Amy Madigan, the actress, is the narrator. The man from L'chaim Comrade Stalin, about Birobidzhan, that's distributed by Cinema Guild. I have several films. Everybody listening, Cinema Guild, they're in Brooklyn, that you can find. Write them, say hey, and they'll do that. If not, then you'll come to me and I'll send you a Vimeo for a small charge. Now, someone may say, oh, charge? Not free? Next time you go to your doctor's office for a little checkup, say, hey, is it free today? Meaning, I always get tired of people thinking that art should be free, even if it's 10 years old or 20 years old. Why? My dentist doesn't fix my filling for free, and I don't expect him to. And so I take, doesn't mean it's the same price when it first came out, but I expect people to pay for art because it's important. And you can see I get serious about that because it pisses me off when people say, oh, Yale, it's been out there 20 years. Okay, go to your doctor. Oh, you've been a doctor for 40 years. You can't give me a break and fix my my broken arm for free today? And the doctor would say, you know what? I think you need fixing, but your brain needs fixing, dude. You got to go to another doctor. So that's why I'm saying that to people. And so when I send it to you, there'll be a small charge because my art isn't for free.
Yeah, so I did want to ask about the Leopold Kozlowski story. So he lived to 100.
Yes, 103 months.
Okay.
Yeah, he did. Well, I met Leopold in 1981, And I would have not met him if Jerzy Kichler, who now lives in Wrocław, formerly known by the Jews as Bressa, had told me, you got to meet this guy. You're interested in Jewish music, Yiddish. Go see this guy. Okay. And I met him, and right away I knew, wow, this guy has something to teach me. And then when I returned, actually for my first documentary film, he's a short snippet in it. And when people saw that, that's called At the Crossroads, Jewish Life in Eastern Europe Today, narrated by Peter McNichol. He's well known. If people don't know him, he was the other male lead in Sophie's Choice. But anyhow, when people said, oh, who's that guy? You got to make a film about him. And then that's when I got the idea. I said, oh, wow, he's so powerful on the screen. And I decided to make the full feature of him, The Last Klezmer. Leopold came from this well-known Brandwein family. Naftuli Brandwein, recorded here in the United States, came here, lived to about 1963. Considered one of the two greatest of the klezmer clarinets. Dave Taras, Ukrainian, Romanian style, and Naftuli Brandwein, I guess you could call it the Polish-Ukrainian style. And I knew it Brandwein, so he says, that's my uncle. I said, well, can you tell me about it? He says, no, you got to tell me, because he left before I was 1 year old, and we got a letter once a year. I know very little except what I read in America, so I told him what I could. But he told me all about his family and everything, and he was generous with the time, though he was not interested in the film at first. No documentary, no cameras. I said, well, we're going to take you back to Lemberg, Lvov, and then go to Przemyślanie, where you're born. No. I said, okay. Well, Leopold, Pole Joe is sort of his nickname. I said, okay. And I said it very late. He walked out the room, he walked down this hallway. I said, okay, well, Oren and I, the cameraman and the sound, we're going. We've paid for it. We'll talk to neighbors. We'll get some B-roll, whatever, but we're going. Okay. And he walked down, and he turned the corner of the hallway. But I figured this guy I'd already known for a couple of years, and he came back. Okay, I will go. I'll do you the favor, but it's very emotional for me, which I didn't poo-poo, because it was. He was going back to his hometown first time in 50 years, where he lost all his family and where he lived the Holocaust. And but it was a wonderful time, and I think about all the outtakes. Here the film was 90 minutes. But I didn't shoot 90 minutes, and you don't shoot a film in the can. I think I have like 20 hours. So one day that will go to archives. It's very valuable. In fact, I should, now that we're talking about it, it kind of makes me want to look at some of the outtakes and see it. But if people get there is a DVD out there, and I put another 20 minutes at the end, like the director's cut. In other words, the stuff never put in that I thought was really good. Mm-hmm. But he was a character. And my film brought attention to him, and then of course he took from there, and he took the title. It was funny because I called it The Last Klezmer. So when the revival of Jewish life is coming back to Kazimierz Krakow in the late 80s and the 90s, he took the title. He said The Last Klezmer, Leopold Kozlowski, The Last Klezmer. He got it from me, and people who saw the film came to see him. He became sort of a tourist attraction in Krakow, particularly during the Krakow Jewish Festival, which we just finished a couple weeks ago. But I was happy for him, and he'll always be, he'll be a great memory, and I feel proud of that film.
Mm-hmm. Now, even on your first trip, I believe you met with some Rum musicians.
Absolutely, and of course, growing up in California and in Detroit and reading books and seeing movies, we called them, like everybody else did, gypsies. With a capital G, though. It was often, I say, how do you, a proper noun, would you spell a small J for Jew? You'd get your 10th grade grammar teacher would write you up. But no, not with the G, small G, even in papers like the New York Times, which bugs me, and I've written many that have gotten better now. And a lot because of me, because they say, oh, okay, yeah, we're sorry. The Romani, Jewish, Rome, Jews. What was interesting is in certain regions, as I was looking, northern Transylvania, the Carpathian Mountains, Bessarabia, Moldova, the country, Moldavia, the province, northeastern Romania. There I would meet Jews who would say, I remember a few tunes, but if you really want to know some tunes who still play, I can sing you, Yitzhak, I'll sing you a tune, but you want to hear a fiddler or a cymbal player? I said, absolutely. He says, they remember. And I said, oh, and then, whoa, how come? Oh, how did they learn? He said, what do you mean, how come they learn? They often would play in Jewish bands, or they would be the band, because we didn't have a Jewish band, and they learned Jewish music. A lot of them were good musicians, and they played. So my first lesson, here I am, I get to Kishinev, right, as a Chisinau, they say, in Romanian, Kishinev, Moldova, and I meet a refusnik, the Liederman family. So these were Russian Jews, Soviet Jews. It was the Soviet Union, who are being so washed, and they can't do this, can't do that. But what they can't do is they say, okay, you don't like me, let me out. No, we refuse. So they weren't allowed visas. And she was a classical pianist and teacher of music. Anyhow, went to the home, and she knew about my interest in klezmer. So she said, I have a friend coming over. And who comes over? I see this short, squat little guy named Nikolai Radu, who she explains to me is Romani, a Roma gentleman. And he just gets to the piano. The first thing, he kind of doffs his head. And I remember, it's like 5'4", husky guy, and his fingers like sausages. I mean, how's this guy, wow, fat fingers. At least every one was two of mine. And he went down and he goes, Yitzchak, Itzik, give a kick. Romanish, Munkasc, Hungarisch, Klezmer, Ukrainish, Russisch, and every 8 bars, he'd change. It was the same melody, but he showed me the different style. Okay. And so I asked him, Nikolai, yes, wow, your Yiddish is better than mine. Yeah, that's beautiful. Why do you speak Yiddish? Why not, first of all, which is a good answer. But he says, I'll tell you why. I was the only non-Jew in this band that I played with for years. We traveled all over the Soviet Union. We played this and that, weddings, chasanas, and he said, simchas, this and that. When it was time to be paid, I want to make sure I understood everything. So, with a wink, a little humor, but also some truth. So I met Jews who spoke fluent Romani. They played in Romani bands. Mm-hmm. I met Roma who spoke fluent Yiddish. And so that also got me interested, not just in the music then, but also their lives, which I could see discriminated against often by the Gentile, the goy, or as they say in Romani, the gaje, the gajo. One gajo is the non-Roma people. Though I was given a compliment by Roma, they said, Yitzhak, you and us, the Jew and the Roma. And he went like this with his fingers, meaning we've suffered. We went up the chimney flues of Auschwitz. We played in bands in many camps. And we came back after the war to resurrect whatever we could of life. And so they felt an affinity for the Jews. And so I became interested. And I did, in fact, I was going to do something this week. And you made me think of it. I'm going to post. This is the 20th anniversary. 20th? 04. Yeah, 04. No, 14th. 30th. Oh, my God. 30th anniversary of probably the only book about the Roma where I spoke to the youth of all ages, and not just youth, but adults as well, called Uncertain Roads, Searching for the Gypsies, where I photograph them and interview them, say, what is life like now today since it's no longer the East Bloc, or things have changed. There's a political awakening in not just East Bloc, because I went to Sweden as well to interview Roma. And so I'm going to mention that book, and I'm very proud of it, and I've had exhibits. And so I became interested, not just focused only on the music, but their lives in general, and seeing that there are some positive things happening in the last 20 years. In fact, I was asked by a major Romani organization in Berlin. They brought me and Barry Fisher. I have to mention his name because he's done a lot of pro bono work for the Roma. He's a lawyer, a Jewish guy, also plays klezmer accordion in L.A. We went together to talk about the building of a Holocaust memorial and what should it be, where it should be, and I felt so honored. And sure enough, some years later, this memorial is there in Berlin to all the Roma people who lost their lives in the Holocaust. And I've learned a lot from them, and I've even kind of composed music like them. So it's become something, one of my passions, and somewhat of an expert. I am asked. I mean, I don't know everything about them, but I know a lot about them, and I know the connection between the Jews and the Roma, and the history and the music, and I know quite a bit about in certain regions, like I said, the Carpathian Mountains, and some of them, they know me when they see me when I come back to the village, so it's a nice feeling.
They had immigrated from India, what, like 1,500 years ago or something?
Yeah, actually, probably I guess that would be the 11th century, the year 1000. Yeah, they were forced, though. It was not by choice. Warring tribes, Muslims, Mongols, various warring tribes, so back and forth. And so they were taken as prisoners instead of just leaving there, and some they left, but why they took is because they worked in fire, and fire was low caste. You worked in the caste system in India. Ooh, it's devil worship. It's but they worked, so they were good, because what does a warring army need? They need someone who can work in iron, because to cast the weaponry. But also they were good horse people. They knew horses inside and out. They rode horses. Also, what do you need for a warring army? You need your tank. Your tank is your horse. Shoeing the horse, feeding, taking care of. So those are some of the reasons. The music part as well, some aspect of it, but it was those the more practical of working with iron and fire and horses. And then they stayed. You're there, and then because I would joke with my friends. They said, "Have you ever thought about returning to India, Rajasthan, or Baluchistan, Pakistan?" What are you nuts? Forget. I don't speak. That language is different. Or it's too hot, or it's too poor, or it's too Muslim, or nah, I mean, the ones I've talked about, they said, I'm interested in returning for research or to meet people and see the correlations of our cultures and see how we've changed because of our 1,000 years now in Europe. But it's not that same connection as Jews would say, okay, I have an affinity and one day I'll go home to when it was Palestine to Palestine and now, of course, Israel. But yeah, it's a very interesting group, and the stereotype of they're all great musicians. No, like not every Jew who picks a violin up is a great violinist. Many are, and they know that, and they learn at a young age, and they want to express it, and they also see it's a way to make money or get themselves out of the ghetto or to be accepted, whatever. And also, I want to say, because people say. The Jews, were there ever stereotypes? Come on, do I walk on water as a Jew? No. People have stereotypes. Sometimes there's a little kernel of truth about it. There were Jews who had stereotypes about Roma, negative ones, because they talk about, dirty, thieves, this, can't trust, but women, forget about it, And Roma, who talked about the Jews. They had money, penny pinchers, so all they care about is money, they'll cheat you. But most knew that was BS. Fostered often by the Gage, the Goy, the Gentile, the outsider, and the Jew and the Roman, particularly Mishnah said, we're not listening to that Mishigas, that craziness. We like each other, and we're going to play music together. We have a good time, and we treat each other with dignity. That's why I've also focused a lot of my ethnographic research over the last 20, 30 years also among the Roma people.
Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff that came up in the books interesting to me. The community of klezmers, they had a language, they had vocabulary that was only between them.
Klezmer Loshen, Klezmer language. So there's and in my book of klezmer, which might be one of the books you have there, I'm very proud. It's the only book published of all the klezmer vocabulary in one book. Now, I didn't make this up. I had to go to do the research, so it was Yiddish research, and it was a lot of hard research, finding from in both former Soviet Union, and then and archives, YIVO, and just libraries that somehow had this manuscripts. And so real quick, why did klezmer slang? Okay, everybody, you get that slang. We have slang. Different professions have slang. Musicians have slang. Jazz slang. I use the word gig. Gig today is ubiquitous. Gig comes from the jazz guys. Tomorrow I'll see you, I'll meet you at the grocery tomorrow, 9 at the downbeat. 9 sharp downbeat. I'm not talking about playing music. The downbeat that's 1 on the downbeat. We hit it, and you don't miss it, because if you miss it, you're out of time, out of rhythm. So there's words we use today, expressions in English that come from jazz. So the klezmer musicians had created a language. First of all, why? So you have the insider. I can speak about you, the outsider. And I'm at a wedding. I'm playing. We're playing. It's great. We're having a good time. Oh, I see beautiful women. Of course, men. It was men. Yes, women who are listening to this. Yes, Jewish men. Sexist, sexual thoughts. If you're heterosexual, or maybe not, if you're gay, you're looking at the men in the room with sexual thoughts. Doesn't matter. Who cares? But yes, so they had terms that they could say. Oh, what a beautiful woman. Oh, what a beautiful figure. Oh, what nice breasts. Yes, those are the words in this klezmer Russian. But also was about money, about food, about instruments, about their lives. So they can speak among themselves, so that when they went to a Gentile, when they were traveling in a town and they were hanging out at a tavern, they could speak among themselves, and the Christians wouldn't understand them. They couldn't be nosy busybodies, because they might say, well, speak Yiddish. A lot of Christians, the Goyim spoke Yiddish. They heard Yiddish. They picked it up, just like a Jew spoke Polish or Belarusian or Ukrainian. And I speak Yiddish. Well, what? That the Gentile Pole or Transylvanian Romanian can't speak Yiddish. If he's in a town, he's learning Yiddish. He's going to learn Yiddish, and many of them picked up enough that they understood. But the klezmer Russian was a secret language, and I will say, so it's not Yiddish. You'll hear words, they say it's yet no. But I learned a couple that I did not find in any of the archives that had been written from the 1890s to 1920, the archival academic research. Yeah. And I was taught by Leopold. He taught me a few. And I looked at all, I said, wow, here's a few, because they were forgotten. And so that was kind of fun. And there's a few times I've used a couple, I've used the words in Yiddish songs I've written a few times. But here's one. This makes sense. So they would use the word verstal. Verstal comes the word verstal. What is verstal? It's a liverwurst, or some kind of worst, WURST, some kind of meat, like a liverwurst. So they said a verstal. Why? Because a clarinet is long and skinny. So they would say, "Hast du gebreit dein Verstal?" Of course, they would say, "Did you bring your Verstal?" Of course, the guy said, "What are you? I'm coming to the gig. Am I a dummy? Of course, I brought my clarinet. I'm here to get paid." But anyhow, some were more obvious. Others, oh, my name, Strom. Mm-hmm. Strom. They would say Strom. And then I said, "What the hell's Strom?" It meant 3. So if you said Strom, that was 9. And so that meant at 9, tonight, when do we finish? Strom. You didn't say 9 is Zager. You said it's 3 plus 3 plus 3. I don't know. And there's others I have to look at. I don't have it in front of me. I couldn't get it to here, but you'll see it there. There's a couple other things with Strom. That would be Shin, Tet, Resh, Aleph, Mem, Sofi. Which, though, in Yiddish, because it's a Yiddish word, but it's not 3. In Yiddish, it means stream. Dan Kegen Strom, my wife wrote, which is go against the stream is my motto. People say let's go right, now I say let's go left. So it means stream, or also a current of electricity. But for the klezmer cats, they for some reason they decided to make it the number 3.
Mm-hmm. And I found it wonderful to read how they would support each other, like in times of illness, or if there's a widow. The better off musicians who were getting more gigs would help some of the other guys.
Yes. Mondays often, in different cities, let's say in Yash, because I know this for example, they had their own shul, their own synagogue. It was anyone could go there, but they It was their dues. They felt comfortable. They would go. They would, like you said, they hang out, play checkers or chess, and eat, talk about the week, what gigs we have on Mondays when they didn't have a gig. That was like their day off, and they did. They said, "Oh, so and so, Shloime passed away. Gewalt, he's got a wife and 6 kids." So we have to support her for until she gets on her feet more or whatever, or the oldest starts to work. And they did that. And it was good. They cared. It was a benevolent society. And because also it's a very unique club. It's a special club. First of all, to be a Jewish musician, you have to know your instrument. Now, were there musicians who played not so well? Yes, I was told. I even met some musicians. Oh yeah, I'll play for Yale. I'm like, I was always polite, but I'm thinking, oh man, this guy. I don't think it's because of his age. I just don't think he ever was a great player. But it's okay. But it's a unique club because you're often, if you were traveling, even if it was just for a day gig out, you travel together. To be a full-time musician was very difficult. There were a few. Speaking of Leopold, his family, they could just only be musicians. They were wanted by everybody. He bragged about it. They played for Kaiser Franz Joseph, who was the last, the big Kaiser of the Austro-Hungarian Empire before he passed away. So most had day gigs, day work, and then they would meet in the evening. But nothing unlike other, they're the Tischlers, the people who were woodworkers. They had their camaraderie. And you have camaraderie because you already have something in common. You're doing something for labor to make a living, but you also you're good at it and you like it. And you see the pros and cons of it. And so when you have another insider, it's easy to talk to someone. If I'm a violinist but I'm talking to someone who's a bricklayer, we could talk about, it's tiring, this and that. But he doesn't understand me that well about playing the violin, and I certainly don't know a lot about bricklaying. So they had that camaraderie, and they often, as you said, I'm glad you brought it up, took care of each other. Because listen, many of these were Orthodox Jews, and these were guys who walked the walk instead of talk the talk. And what is Torah? Let's just cut to the chase. I don't care how much Talmud, how much Torah, how much Rashi. What is a Jew? What is Torah? Be kind to the other. Be kind. Extend a helping hand to the fellow Jew, to the fellow human, whether Jewish or not. And the rest is commentary. And so they practice it. How can I forget about Shlomo's wife now? Well, she'll manage, I'm not making that much. What, I'm going to take 30% less on this gig to help her? No, that's not the Jewish way. We're a mishpacha. We're all family, particularly, and she's still part of the Klezmer mishpacha family. We have to help her. So these were cats, these were musicians that walk the walk. They daven. If they learn Torah Talmud, you can learn all the minutiae, the do's and the don'ts, the laws and the customs. But it means nothing if you're not good to your fellow human. And so they practice that. So that's something to be very proud of as a fellow klezmer musician.
There's a manuscript that I think is the Weinstein manuscript. You met him in Brooklyn in the early 80s, and he taught you a lost Tishnigan.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Usher Weinstein. That book, I think the title, I think we came up with my wife, it's going to be called The Lost Stoliner Geniza, or the Stoliner Geniza, The Lost Stoliner Manuscript. That's what it's going to be called. It's coming out next year, folks. Okay. Next fall, being published by the same publisher who published my biography on Dave Taras. It's Or-Tav, O-R-Tav, T-A-V. Anyhow, yes, so I have this Stoliner Yichus, which I'm very proud of. And my uncle said to me, my uncle Harold Olaf Schoen was passed on a couple years ago. He kept a lot of the Stoliner tradition. He was the one who, as a kid, was pounding nails in that Stoliner synagogue, which is now a church. Anyhow, he says, you're going to NYU, Yale, go down to Borough Park, go meet the Stoliners, go meet the Pilchiks, the two rabbis, the twins, the Rosh Yeshiva. You got to go meet. They'll remember me. Uncle Harold, look, and what you see now, Leah, people, if you're seeing this, I haven't changed. This is pretty much what I wear. I wear shorts all the time. I mean, winter I wear long pants. Don't define a man by his clothes, because I'm very simple dressed. I'm not a chassid. No. when you go down there in front of the yeshiva shul, if they come out, just say who your Baba was, give her name, and who your Alta Baba was, your great-grandmother. And you'll see. Really? I went down there, they looked at me askance. Who are you? Well, My name's Yale Strom, yeah. I'm originally from, Detroit, yeah. My grandmother was Dora Hoberman Weiner. Well, she came to Dora Strom, married my Zeta. And her mother was Chava Hoberman, friends with Chava Hoberman. You mean where Reb Yanket, the Rebbe, the Stoliner Rebbe, died in her home? Oh, the red carpet. And I got a personal, within an hour meeting with the Rebbe, then who's still living in Borough Park. Reb Baruch Shoichet is his name. Anyhow, they said, so I got to know them, and I would occasionally visit them. Not every, I was going to school, I had to make money, I was busking in the subways to make money. NYU was not cheap. I got a little scholarship, mostly not. My parents weren't paying for it. They didn't have the extra money because I'm one of 8 kids, so, and I lived in Astoria, and if you know Queens, Astoria, Queens, and it's just Borough Park, it's an hour and a half schlep, so I wasn't going to do it every day, once every week. Finally, they introduced me and said, I became friends with these 2 chassidus, really nice guys. And they said, we know a Jewish musician who was at Klezmer, we want to introduce you. Oh, great. So I go and I meet Usher, and I become friends with Usher, and about twice a month I would go and visit him. And I'd spend the afternoon, 3 to 6, 3 to 7 maybe. Basically, just talking. I play a little music. Sometimes he had me go to the pharmacy to fill his prescription and then bring it home. And after several months, he said, Yitzchak, go underneath my bed. There's an old box there, and I want you to pull it out. And I said, oh, okay. And I went under the bed. Of course, cobwebs, a lot of dust. And bring out this box, quite about a foot and a half wide on each side. Bring it out, and it was tied up with this old twine. And I open it, and it disintegrated in the air. Hadn't probably been touched in 60, 70 years. Mind you, Usher's like 88. He's like maybe close to 90 at this time. This is like 84, 85. And I look and I see music. I see sheet music, and I said, holy shit, Usher. And he said to me, Ja, Yitzchak, and he said, das ist gewesen mein Gigbuch. This was my gig book. He used the word gig. I loved it, And anyhow, long story short, we look through the music. He talks to me about the gigs, the simchas he played for the Rebbe. Then the Stoliner Rebbe was living in Stolin and the others, but also for the Jews, non-Jews, religious, non-religious. Anyhow, finally he says, my 2 friends who brought me there, he said, I gave them the manuscript. They're making 1 copy for you, Yitzhak, and this, the original, is going in the archives of the Rebbe in Estonia. Oh, of course. So Rebbe moves to 95, moves to Israel, and invariably, as people know, when they move across country or foreign country, you sometimes lose something. And they lost part of their archives, including this. So I'm the only one in the world that has the Xerox, not the original yellowed paper, of all these tunes. There were some 96 tunes that he played, some with his name on it, others that he transcribed, that he learned from a guy named Vadim, who might have been Jewish, maybe not, but he was, Usher certainly was. And this book's going to come. There'll be a history chapter, but I'm very proud. Some will say, oh, I know this tune, or others won't. But I want to say, just before I stop here, here's the interesting thing. People say, oh, he was a chassid this. Was it all nigonim? Was it all freilachs and skotchnes? The vast majority, yes, but not all. I found a tune called Havana. I found Schubert's very famous Serenade. I found a piece called Autumn Song by Tchaikovsky. I found the piece called The Poet and the Peasant by what's his name? Von Soup. Was it Franz von Soup? What's my point? They were playing popular classical tunes because that was the pop music of the day. Payas, Chassid, Shomer Shabbos, certainly didn't stop them playing for pop music. Meaning these musicians had a wide range. First of all, good music's good music. They liked it, the melody, it moves me in my neshama, in my heart. But they also were smart. They said, listen, we're playing for wealthy Jews, we're playing for wealthy Gentiles, and they want some of the, they don't want just niggin after niggin, Freilach 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's fine. No, they also want some of the waltzes. They want to do some ballroom dancing, or they just want to hear the beautiful serenade by Schubert and just sit back and enjoy it because it's a damn good piece. That's why I still played today in 2024 all over the world. That was interesting, and that's going to show a lot of people, particularly klezmer researchers, when people say, "Oh, klezmer this." No, they only play Hasidic. BS. These guys had a wider range, and in some ways, perhaps those Hasidim then, 100 years ago, actually were more open to a wider range of music than the Hasidim today that I've played at these parties. That all it is a Hasidic music. A lot of it very modern, a lot of it very repetitive, a lot of it not very good. I'm going to say it's just boring music. Some of it good, but some of it not. But not playing Schubert's Serenade or von Soup's Peasant and the Poet. And they say, "Oh, we would never play that. No, that's Goyish." Really? Funny how the Stolen Karlin Hasidim in 1906, between 1921, because that's what it was dated, this manuscript, 1906, 1920, they seem to have no problem playing these tunes for everybody, including the Jews.
Very interesting. Hi, just a quick break from the episode. If you're interested in klezmer, you should listen to my episodes with Alicia Svigals, Polina Shepherd, Josh Socalled Dolgin, and Marilyn Lerner. It's a joy to be able to bring these meaningful conversations to you, but this project costs me quite a bit of money and lots of time. Please support the series through either my merchandise store or on my Ko-fi page. You'll find the links in the show notes. For the merch, it features a unique design by artist Steffi Kelly. You'll also find the links to sign up for my newsletter, where you'll get access to exclusive information about upcoming guests. Please check out my back catalog with weekly episodes going back to 2021. Now back to Yale Strom. You mentioned busking in New York as a young man. And you do play many different styles of music, too.
Yes, I play some bluegrass and fiddle music, Appalachian fiddle music. Of course, some Romani music. Classical, I still play some classical music because that's what I initially started. Balkan music, I love Balkan music. Sephardic music. North African music, I love the Middle Eastern scales, Arabic scales. And I play a lot of my own music. I do a lot of composing, and I enjoy it. And I've composed, some of it is more Jewish, klezmer sounding. Others, there's some jazz elements to it, classical elements, Turkish, Middle Eastern elements to it. I've written in 7 or 11 or 13. Those are rhythmic time signatures that klezmer's never really played in, if ever, because that's more of the Middle Eastern, the Balkan region. Though the klezmers from Romania who would go down to Istanbul, Constantinople is when they would go down and back and forth. I met some, they said, no, we heard it and we learned that. But you wouldn't find usually the Polish or the East Hungarian because they weren't being influenced so much by the odd meter. That's really the odd meter. But yeah, I enjoy playing, I like to challenge myself. That's the word. I don't want it to become, I'm just going to do another, I'm just going to write another Freilach or play, ya da 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 dee dee, be dee 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 da 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 dee dee dee. That's a Freilach played at every Jewish wedding since the revival of klezmer in the last 30 years. It's a wonderful tune, but if that's all I ever played, I would get bored. I guess that's one thing. I can get bored easily. So maybe that's why I've been working in all these genres. I'm always constantly, what's over the next horizon? Mm-hmm. In fact, my wife says to me, she says, Yale just put out a book. He just published it. Or the doc just opened it up and, he went to the opening. So if people say, so is he basking in the applause and the praise? No, he's back in his office working on the next book and the next film. And so as I've gotten older, I said, no, let me enjoy it for a little bit. But I'm kind of that way. And I'm relentless. What's the word? relentless energy to see what's I can push myself to new heights, and that's for me, that's the fun of it. It's like a cook. You may be great at 30 dishes. Are you only going to do those 30 dishes forever? No, a cook says, no, maybe, I've been cooking Jewish all my life. I think I'm going to cook Albanian. What? Albanian? Okay, let's see. I just said that, folks. I don't know. I actually do. It's influenced by the southern, Kosovo and southern Serbia. A lot of bureks and Turkish, but still, I think that's what makes me, if I can say, a good or better than average artist, is I'm seeking out other artists, listening, looking, viewing, watching, reading, and saying, that gives me an idea. How can I incorporate into the stuff I feel confident at? And I'm constantly doing that.
So, Yale, I wanted to ask you about your life as a composer, because you've also composed some sort of classical crossover music.
I have, and I've been very honored by certain musicians. Rachel Barton Pine, she said, Yale, write me an encore piece, so it could be played for just solo. I wrote a 3-movement piece based upon Hungarian, Romanian, and Jewish motifs. It's called Bessarabian Suite. She played it with the Israeli Philharmonic. I was, in other places around the world. I was commissioned by a group called Art of Elan. They're here in San Diego, but they do all kinds of classical music. The Hausman String Quartet, and the soloist, because it's a string quintet, was Sara Caswell, playing both classical but also improvising in a classical way. And the theme was the theme was home. So I wrote a 3-movement piece called Detroit. First movement is called Anishinaabe. It's about the indigenous who were there before anybody was there. Then the second movement is called Hastings Street, where the East European Jews lived in the city of Detroit. And the third one is called Black Bottom, the African Americans. It's not called Black Bottom, by the way, because they were black. No, it was the French gave it that name, whatever it's French, because of the really rich black earth there. I've written string. Bordeaux, the Bordeaux Philharmonic commissioned me, and I wrote a violin. They brought me there commemorating, sadly, when the Jewish children of Bordeaux were sent to the camps. I composed a cello violin piece. So yeah, string quartets I've composed several. It's a challenge for me, and it's a great, and I feel so humbled to hear a great body of a great orchestra or great musicians play it. And so it's a different side of me, because again, it's the challenge part again. So I enjoy writing for my band and other klezmer ensembles, but I enjoy writing for larger ensembles as well, because it just makes me study more and learn more. And I think I have something to say musically. And so far, the people who have played it said, wow, this is good, Yale. And I said, great. But better than that, the audience is clapping, some even saying encore. So, I sit there quietly. And one last thing, that's right. I wrote a choral piece, full body choral, men and women, all the ranges, and sextet, string quartet, plus contrabass and classical guitar. It's a 4-movement piece called, and the theme was metamorphosis. Of course, during COVID, that could be anything, change. So I did some research, read articles, this and that, some books. So I wrote the title's called Uncle Albert, because I read some Camus, Uncle Albert and Brother Franz, because I read some Kafka, and so some of their I'm quoting a little bit of them. I'm also quoting Native American, Jewish, Indian as an East Asian. So that's a piece, and I'm hoping to record that professionally, but next year with a choral group. So for any people who are in choirs out there, want a serious piece of music, Uncle Albert and Brother Franz.
It's wonderful. It strikes me you're one of these people that had you been more focused in one area, you wouldn't have been as happy in your life, right?
You know what, Leah? I was just thinking that the other day, and someone said, Yale, what if you had just focused? You would have done so much more in classical or books. I said, I don't know. I wouldn't have been happy. I am happy doing many things. First of all, I meet different people, different artists who are good at that. I like challenging myself. My wife will say this, and people said, if Yale had been diagnosed, maybe I was. I definitely have ADD. Yeah, I talk fast. I have a lot of energy. I've put it to use, though. I've put that, hyperness or whatever, but okay, because I can focus. People say, oh, he can't focus. Of course, if I couldn't focus, I would have written one book and that's it. I would be starting everything and never finishing. But no, I can focus. But I have that energy and I have that, gangbusters, because it brings me pleasure. I guess that's it. I feel so happy when I'm doing it. And then, of course, the extra happiness is to see smiles or people like you. I mean, that to see someone, have all my friend who's he's an accordion player down here. He's Hungarian ethnic from Toledo, Ohio. He just sent me a quick thing. I don't know. He says, "Yeah, look what I saw in the Toledo Public Library." He pulled it out. It was the book of Klezmer. That makes me feel great. That my books. There's nothing Jewish about the Toledo Public Library. It's a public library. Anyone could go to it and take out. But they bought it and it's been used. He said he saw the pages bent. So yeah, I would have not been as happy if I had just focused only on one thing. And I teach people. Lastly, I'm a professor at San Diego State University. I was teaching at NYU. I love New York City. My wife's from New York. I love the energy and all that. What brought me to San Diego was something that some artists in Canada don't have to worry about. It's called health insurance. We don't have that national health insurance. And they created a position. This I'm very proud of. The Jewish Studies program of San Diego State created a position of artist in resident for me. And I was there for that for like 16 years until it ended. And then I moved over to the music department. But if somebody said, well, why did you get your PhD and only teach? And I said, no, I wouldn't have been as happy. So, I'm the person who likes to go to smorgasbords. I like to try different food. I don't want to always go to the same deli.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the Dave Terrace book, which I also read, The King of Klezmer. Yeah, it was interesting. So many interesting things in here. One of the things that struck me as a musician is that it came up that his idea, I guess, which was current, is that the band leader just always plays, has all the solos, just dominates, which is kind of surprising.
Yes, he did. That's why if you listen to the recordings,
he's playing.
We can. Occasionally you hear a little bit. What he did with his, I think it was his son-in-law, Sam Musiker. You hear Sam playing the trumpet and stuff. But yeah, Dave was a blower. It's like, hey, it's about me. I got a big ego, healthy ego, but he could back it up because he was, as we know, a virtuoso player. When I was talking to his son, and grateful to Cy, who has since passed on, who allowed me to, who gave me such information that no one else knew about. We knew about Dave snippets, whatever, but a lot of stuff that was just family stories and the photos and meeting. What I love is the Russian side, the Soviet Russian side that never came out, that were there and stuff, and it's interesting, and photos, but also music that I said, son, why didn't he publish? He said, he wrote these, or he remembered these, transcribed them, but he wasn't sure if the public was ready for them. I said, really? Yeah, he was a very proud man. He had a certain reputation, and he had, he came into a room and he expected everyone to say, oh, the Dave Terrace, the King of Kings, the King of Klezmer. And I said, he says, but you have my permission. And we did a concert once playing a number of these tunes. They're not, some are easy, some aren't. If you look at the Doinas, that he transcribed note for note. But that was a fun project. And I'm very proud because here Terrace has influenced several generations of other klezmer musicians, clarinetists in particular, but just others. And I did the first biography on him. No one else had done it. They had snippets, but nothing as in depth. But I saw him play, but I never met him personally. But I got to know of him quite well from his son and his daughter-in-law, who is still with us, and other family members who spoke highly about who Dave Dovidal, as they called him. And of course, the story that's wonderful in the story. You read it, that I love so much. Oh, because I got to interview. He was in the band. He was 16. He was the youngest in the band, like 54. And they're playing at one of the Catskill resort Jewish hotels, like anyone. It's where you make, you got to go where the audience is, and Lot went up during the summer, so he's playing, and and he's 16. It was a good gig for him, and he's a great trumpet player. Shelley Hendler came to me. Shelley, who, by the way, a lot of people, he became like a PhD scripts, researcher before he passed away some years ago. He lived in La Jolla. That's where I interviewed him, and he told me about this. He said, so I see these two African-American black guys come in, and Tara said, swing, let's play, they're black, they want to hear, they don't want to hear the Freilachs, the Doinas, they want to hear the Jewish swing. And he starts to play something, whatever, and Hendler had the hooks because he's 16. Shh, Mr. Taras. What? And he said Mr. Taras. Never like, hey, Dave, it's Mr. Taras. Mr. Taras, yes, young man. They don't want to hear you play the swing. Because honestly, you can't play it well. Oh, they came to hear the Doina, the Freilach, the Romanian stuff, because you kill it. And they want to hear that. Really? He does it. And of course, the punchline is, people hear, who were these two African American? Charlie Parker and Miles Davis. They came to hear the great. So I guess Dave Taras can say he was great, because those, of course, they weren't alive. I wasn't playing. They didn't know me, but that level, they're not going to come hear Yale Strom. I mean, they came because he was fantastic on that, the licorice stick, as it was also known. And Taras was, of course, very proud of that moment. So it was a great story. Of course, the story was told by Shelley, but backed up also by Cy, his son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of violin playing, we talked earlier about the Jewish violin tradition. I found it interesting in your book of the history of klezmer about how the klezmer violinist kind of influenced what we know as the Russian school of violin playing, using shoulder pads, more glissando and vibrato.
Yes, and we know that for a fact because the two major schools of were sort of codifying classical, because the violin has been around since the 1600s, but we had instruments like it that weren't violins, they were viols and so forth. But really, 18th century, 19th century. So you have the school in St. Petersburg and you have school in Odessa. And so you had Stoliarsky and who was the other? God, I'm forgetting. Auer. Oh, thank you. Leopold Auer. Right. So here they are, both Jews, both knew klezmer music, both came from a folk, but they also were codifying. They were creating, but we're playing classical music. We're playing music for the Tsarist court and for other courts of all of Europe and wealthy, fine people. This is fine, refined music. And we have to look a certain way and play a certain way, and we're playing this music, and it's been written for us. And we have these great Russian composers as well as German and Viennese and others. And so, yes, and so holding the, because if you don't have today, shoulder rest, but if you didn't have a pad, it is hard, because what did that do? People who don't know the violin, they say, well, what's the difference? You just hold it with your neck. Well, the truth is, yes, you're holding it. My first lesson, very first day, the teacher taught me, I was 8 years old, she showed me, put your violin in your shoulder, hold it tight, hold it like this, I'm holding it. And then she grabbed the end of the scroll and she pulled it. Oh, no, improper. She pulled away from it. You're not holding it strong enough. Your neck muscle and your shoulder, you have to hold it that I can't pull it. So what did Stoliarsky and Auer think? But what does that do? That is the left hand. You're using the muscle, okay, but it's straining it, and you're limiting what it can do then, because you can only go up and down so much on the scroll, with that tension, because you're tense. So if you have something, a pad, or now today what we call a shoulder rest, under helping hold it, gripping it, so now you're still using the shoulder here and the neck, but less tense, and that allowed the the classical violinists to show off, to go way up on the high E and stuff, that they're really, so it's just fluid and be really going from the E down to the low G. And then, of course, the klezmer violins, the glissando was the, what's that? That's the voice. Whoa, whoa, not just going, oh, but just the glissando singing those. The folk musician said, I'm playing folk music. I'm going to copy what the vocals are doing. And they did a lot more glissandi. And they're fat vibrato, thick vibrato, because the klezmers used vibrato. It was almost like a tight vibrato. Some of it was learned from the Roma, who I think also it came from their singing, which actually comes from the Indian style of the Indian language, and even Indian style of this very tight vibrato. I wouldn't even try to do it. I could do it more if I was playing the violin. So you put these things together, and you see how 19th century virtuosic classical violin is now. This is what we are going to teach, and we codify it. And this is how, if you're going to play Western classical violin, meaning the great composers. This is how you should play. We're taking it from the folk realm, and you're a great musician, Mr. Folk Violinist, but now we're a classical violinist, and there's certain ways we hold the violin, certain ways we vibrato when we should vibrato, not vibrato, certain ways we move up and down the fingerboard. And the klezmer, the Jewish teachers were very influential. I won't say were they the only, because no one can say only about anything in life, except I always say the doctor who's talking to you about cancer. Then there's some onlys there, but only no. But was it greatly one of the great influential aspects of playing classical violin? Absolutely. And they happen to be Jewish, and they actually played klezmer music. So why wouldn't they take what they learned? But now, how do we make it so so every violinist that comes and learns from me is going to learn the same way?
And you met a student of Oistrach's who said that he had taught him some klezmer tunes.
David Kamhi, Kamhi, in, of all cities, you would think, oh, where, in St. Petersburg? No, Sarajevo. He was Yugoslav, or Bosnian, as we say today. His parents, survivors. They survived. They were both taken to the island of Rab. The Italians, they were under the Italians, and luckily the Italians weren't as despotic as the German Nazis were. But anyhow, I went to meet them, and they said, oh, you're interested in music and the violin, you got to meet David. He came over and talked to me. You can even read about him on Google a little bit. I hope he's still around with us. And he told me the story, yes, how Oistrach's first teacher was a klezmer violinist for a few weeks, and then they said, okay, he's got that down. Enough of that. Now we're going to go to the genre. Not that they were embarrassed or looked down. They knew the genre music that was going to make him a living and give him the full respect. Folk musicians got respect, but let's be honest. A lot of people, we even say today, yes, he's a folk fiddler. He's an Appalachian fiddler. And I enjoyed it. Great. I paid. But, tomorrow I see Yitzhak Broman. All of a sudden your voice changes in Carnegie Hall. They're both violinists. They should play different genres. But it was that connotation. Society does that for lots of sociological reasons. And so that's why. And then so Oistrach went on to be great. And Igor is still with us. His son became great. And Oistrach was my mother's favorite classical virtuosic violinist. So I got to see Oistrach when I was like 13, 14 live, and which was quite something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of your recent albums I enjoyed is the Broken Consort, Shimmering Lights. And I believe it features Sara Caswell on there. I interviewed her recently for the podcast.
Yeah, Sara, it's a dear friend of mine. I got to meet her when I taught. I taught for 10 years at the Mark O'Connor Fiddle Strings Camp. Mark O'Connor, one of the greatest virtuoso violinists of all styles, but particularly fiddle, Appalachian, country music, and jazz as well. So I met Sara, and she's such a sweetheart. First of all, just a lovely human, but man, can she play the hell out of that violin. Jazz, blues, bluegrass, classical. Her classical is unbelievable. Anyhow, so I thought, let's do a string oriented, and I'm very proud of that because people do their Christmas album. So I said, well, I'm not going to do my Christmas album, but I'm going to do my Hanukkah album. And so we put Sephardic, Ladino songs. My wife, shout out to my wife Elizabeth Schwartz, who, if I may say, was quite a wonderful singer, contralto. So she sings in Ladino, she sings in Yiddish, sings in Hebrew, sings in English, and I even wrote a piece that's just instrumental, and I feel really proud of, the Bashir Mizmor, where you hear Sarah and myself. So there's 2 violins, we have bass, we have classical guitar, we have oud, one of the great oud players of the world, Amos Hoffman, Israeli. So I think what I really like is people can say, oh, Mao Tzur, oh, I know that, and all of a sudden, oh, you don't know this one, and this is Northern Moroccan. And so they'll know it, but most people know it, but also the improvisation aspect, because I like to do improvisation and let them. Sarah, how can I not? She's one of the greatest. And Amos, all of them. And even klezmer musicians improvised. They would do that, particularly in Hasidic Nigunim. They didn't always just play A-A-B-B for 30 minutes in a row. They would go off, because also the singing, because where does the klezmer, the Jewish musician, what was his greatest influence? People say, oh, that Gentile violinist or the hammer dulcimer. It was the singing in shul, davening, the first and oldest instrument that we all play as all humans, the voice. And when you would hear the cantor, or the Baal Kriya, maybe you don't have a cantor, but the one who's leading the Torah reading or or just regular davening, you would hear the melodies, but they would go off. They would sing long, and it never was exactly the same. So the musicians are hearing that and say, okay, he did a little slightly different, a little flat there in that particular few words. Let me try that on the violin or whatever. So anyhow, so that's what we brought to Shimmering Lights, and I'm very proud of it because we got really good reviews, and they're all professional musicians, of course, and we took some of the known tunes that people knew and said, well, they put a new spin on it, new dreidel spin on it. And so I hope people go out there, download it. It's available, folks, on all the music platforms. It's Yale Strom's Broken Consort. So I had to look that up. Shimmering Lights, Yale Strom's Broken Consort. So what the consort is all strings. Guitars, plectrum, string, oud, bass, viola we had as well, cello in there. So what breaks it? The voice.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was a Renaissance term. I had to do a little research. I didn't know it. I said, a broken consort. So it's the consort of string, but you broke it with the voice. So it's Yale Strom's Broken Consort. I would be honored. Please, thank you. But do put a little piece of Bashir Mizmor, because I'm really proud of that, because it's that's on the Shimmering Lights. It's classical Middle Eastern Jewish. It's like, whoa, where's it go? And Sarah has one of the most amazing moments of improvisation that I've ever heard any violinist, and you'll hear it. You'll listen to it today. It's like, whoa.
You're about to hear an excerpt from Bashir Mizmor, the Shimmering Lights album with Yale Strom's Broken Consort. I just wanted to touch you. You've written so many beautiful books. This book, The Expulsion of the Jews, which was the 500th anniversary. So you traveled extensively in a totally different culture in terms of the Sephardic Jews, which not every listener would even know that history. Do you want to speak to that briefly?
Sure. Shapolsky, I had just was doing a little work there, and I went up to Ian Shapolsky, the publisher who owned it, and I said, I have this idea for a book. And I told him, I said, 1992 is going to be the 500th anniversary of the expulsion. Let me go interview, photograph, history. It might be one of a kind. Who knows if someone else is doing it? We won't worry about them. But I already have a reputation because I had already done the last Jews of Eastern Europe, which got a New York Times review. Which once you get that really kind of sets a high bar. So that was good. So people knew me. And he said, "Okay, Yale." So it was good. So I got a publisher to pay some of my expensive. I'm an artist. And I'm living in New York City, and things are expensive, and And yes, I've published a lot of books, but they're not selling millions. So anyhow, so I went, and in fact, I was in Spain. I was about to go to Morocco, and what happened? It was 1991, and was it one of the Intifadas? It was Israel and sadly the West Bank, the Gazans. There was war, and they were saying to Americans, be careful if you're going to North Africa or to Africa. And so, and my friends, they said, yeah, maybe. I said, I'll be all right. And then I thought about it. I said, well, you know what? Maybe they know more than I do. So I went to Spain, Portugal, Turkey, Yugoslavia, which is interesting, and Bulgaria. And because it's in America, even let's say in Canada as well, we tend to be East European, Ashkenaz centric, but there is that other beautiful another side of the culture that was influenced by the Iberian culture, by Moorish culture, by Romani culture, and then spread because sadly of the expulsion. And they went to North Africa, they went to the Benelux countries. But they also went to the Ottoman Empire for the most part, and only recently, real quick. So they went to Romania, and that was interesting. There are Sephardic shuls in Romania, Bucharest. So because Romania, Eastern Europe, Romania, the great Lebedev singing Yiddish song. But Romania, Balkans, Black Sea had that influence too. So a lot of East European Jews, a lot of American Jews, Canadian Jews don't realize that. Oh, really? There's Sephardic influence. There was actually a larger influence than we even realized. Anyhow, my wife only just found out her last name's Elizabeth Schwartz, a writer. You should look her up, folks. She just wrote a book called The Sweet Fragrance of Life that's in Yiddish and in English. Anyhow, Romanian her dad, and so she sings in a Romanian dialect. When people, Yiddish dialect, that's simply all the U's are E's. So I say a good Shabbos, but no, a Git Shabbos. Good goes to Git. Purim goes to Purim, etc., etc. Anyhow, she just found out last year. She's Sephardic on her dad's side. A cousin of hers did the genealogy and everything, and at 1432 they expelled, and they went to the Ottoman Empire, and they went to Romania, which was under control of the Ottoman Turks, and eventually. And the name and the last name was Schwartz, but it had been spelled Sfarti, Svard. What is Svard? Svard in Yiddish is a Sephardic Yid, is a Sephardic Jew. But anyhow, so I guess in my family, I'm married to also part Sephardic Jew. But I was always curious. And the music. Here's the music part. People say, oh, it's different from Klezmer. Some Sephardic, Ladino, very different. But it has the essence of what Jewish music is in terms of the scale. When you hear the Middle Eastern Sephardic music from Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, Bulgaria, parts of North Africa, they're playing the scales that we grew up in. I say these scales are older than the word Jew. They're older than the three Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Really? Yeah, they're when we're wandering ites, tribes. And these are the scales. This is the base of all Jewish music. Did it change? Yes. In Eastern Europe, you're hearing folk melodies and polkas, and from Czech Republic or Poland and this and that. Romanian, you're hearing different things. You're influenced from the Roma people, and we're influenced from people. But the Middle Eastern music that the flamenco is based upon, as well as the Jewish music. But it's the Middle Eastern scales, and so that scale that we play, that tonality, that to me is that's the basis of klezmer. So here I was going more closer to the source than if I was going to to Iași, Romania, or to Warsaw, Krakow, or wherever I was doing research. So that musically it made sense too to visit musicians and to hear and to see how I could imitate on the violin what they were playing on the tar, the 3-string Turkish instrument, or the flutes, the kaval, various beautiful instruments, and for me, the Middle Eastern scales move me more than the scale. Why? Because it's all the gray notes on the piano, or as much as it. People say gray notes on the piano. I only have white keys and I have black keys. I say, oh, that's good, because if you didn't, you should to turn in your piano. You got ripped off. It's all the microtones, right? It's all the quarter tones. It's the tunes that we can sing with our voice, because you and I, Leah, we can go. We don't have frets on our vocal cords. Guitars, it's harder. Fretless guitar, fretless. You can bend notes, and it's like, whoa, what is that note? Is it B? Is it B flat? Is it B double flat? Whoa, it's somewhere in there. It's not on the piano. I can't play it. That's why I say to my piano players, klezmer music on the piano, nah, chords. Of course, I'm joking. They're great pianists. But the truth is they can't bend the note unless they're maybe going inside and doing some prepared piano stuff. But fretless instruments can. Bass, cello, viola, oud, and of course a singer. And so it was fun to do that book. Expulsion of the Jews, 500 Years of Exodus, yeah.
You've done so much, and you continue to do so much. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you particularly want to draw attention to?
I will say this. I won't say much more. I decided during the pandemic, like a lot of artists, when we're not traveling and stuff, I started to write a historical novel, and I finished it, and it's going to be published next year. And I think it's the publisher is great. You can imagine it will be based upon a lot of experiences, but a lot of history. So I'm excited about that because most of my stuff has been nonfiction. Though, do you know about my Shlomo Boimel books, Leah?
Yeah, I have them.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
okay, good. I sold 4. No, but people, if you hear what's that? They're for adults as well. Yes, they're kid-oriented, but a good folk tale is a good folk tale. Yeah. What I'm proud about it is it's a folk tale based upon ethnographic research, based upon stories I heard from Jews and Roma people in northeastern Romania. Shlomo Boimel, one about Purim and one about Hanukkah. I'm working on a musical right now. Wow. That we will be workshopping next summer at the Oak Globe Theater in San Diego, musical on the life of Bella and Marc Chagall. I've written original music for it, like 16 songs. And what I'm proud to say is, no, not everyone's a klezmer or a Yiddish song, because guess what? I would be bored. No, it's a musical. There'll be some Jewish flavored songs, yes, and some that are, what is that? Sondheim or Gershwin or Bernstein? I'm not the big head. I'm saying those names, but just drawing from lots of different styles because of the stories. So that I'm really, and I wrote the lyrics too in English. One song that we do have in Yiddish, a lullaby. It would seem very appropriate in the scene. Just go to my website and support artists like myself and others. And I'm so grateful that you gave me this opportunity, knowing that you've done other wonderful artists, Sara, as well as others. It's nice to be considered, and I hope I keep planning on I'm working on a doc. I'll just tell you real quick, and we have an audio drama coming by the same people who produced The Witches of Lublin. this is my wife's book, The Sweet Fragrance of Life, it's called. The Sweet Fragrance of Life is the book. 3 stories. The Yiddish actress Yelena Schmulitzin, I don't know if you know, she's actually done Hollywood. Wonderful. She reads the Yiddish, and my wife Elizabeth Schwartz does the English side of it. And I just finished this week all the music cues and everything, and that will come out in October. Audible.com or wherever one gets an audio drama that they listen to, because you might buy the book and say, my Yiddish isn't that good, but I can follow and hear it, and it's wonderful stories because the genre is, Elizabeth calls the genre feminist shtetl horror. I'll just leave it at that, folks. Got to get the book to see what that means to you.
Well, thanks so much for this today.
Thank you, Leopold. I really appreciate that. And good questions. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share this with your friends and check out episodes you may have missed at leahroseman.com. If you could buy me a coffee to support this series, that would be wonderful. Or you can browse the collection of merch with a very cool, unique, and expressive design from artist Steffi Kelly with notebooks, mugs, shirts, phone cases, and more. I'm an independent podcaster, and I really do need the help of my listeners. All the links are in the show notes. Have a wonderful week.